I promised myself a long time ago that I was never going to make this video. I told myself that plenty of other people with much more talent and skill had already told this show's story and praised it for all of its accomplishments. I'm not supposed to make this video, because how can you possibly ever explain how you feel about your favorite show? The Spectacular Spider-Man is a little show from 2008 that began production at the tail end of the Raimi series. But unlike shows like Spider-Man the New Animated Series, which were created as an unofficial continuation of the Raimi series, Spectacular simply draws inspiration from it and its characters, taking that essence that Raimi and the whole Sony team created and perfecting it. Spectacular is a show that follows the life of Peter Parker as he starts a brand new year of high school, but this year is somehow different. Some people spend their summer vacation at the beach or relaxing at home, but not Peter. Over the summer, Peter became
Spider-Man. I am the Spectacular Spider-Man!
And to be frank, he thinks he's hot to vacation because of it. He walks to school with all the exaggerated swagger he can muster. Peter has never been popular. In fact, he's never been much of anything. You can tell because his lack of qualities is amplified by the people he surrounds himself with. He's a pretty shrimpy kid. Flash Thompson is a football star. He's not very cool. Eddie Brock is the definition of rad. He's never had too much money. Harry Osborn is literally rich. It almost seems like the only thing he's got going on for him is his brain, but he's still outshined by his classmate and close personal friend, Gwen Stacy. So yeah, Peter's not doing too great, but one bug bite and a summer of stopping low-end crimes later, and he thinks his world is going to change. He's wrong. He still gets picked on by Flash every day, Aunt May still has money issues, and to add insult to injury, becoming Spider-Man has left little to no room for his loved ones. This is a Peter Parker down on his luck, but hey, how much worse can things get? So much worse.
Please tell me these guys are going on the naughty list.
You see, this is a Spider-Man who's yet to encounter any villains of the super variety, so when they start crawling out of the gutters, he's easily overwhelmed.
Where do all these guys come from?
And this is something that Greg Weisman and Victor Cook, the creators of the show, did on purpose. They want him to be overwhelmed. They want him to be stressed out. Heck, with how they treated him in this series, you'd think they hate Spider-Man. I mean, seriously, a 10 o'clock curfew? For Spider-Man, you gotta be kidding me. Actually, let's focus on that curfew for a minute. Who gave it to him? Well, his lovely Aunt May, of course. Why'd she give it to him? I don't know, maybe because just a few months ago, her husband was gunned down in the streets of New York looking for Peter? But more importantly, she just wants him to be safe and responsible. So not only does the curfew present a challenge for Spidey that comes back time and time again, it holds pretty significant emotional weight. If Peter breaks his curfew, he breaks May's trust. And break it he does. In fact, he kinda just stomps on everyone's trust here and there while he's swinging around trying to save the day. He breaks Harry's trust when he ditches him to go after the Vulture. He breaks the Connor's trust when he sells pictures of the Lizard to the Daily Bugle. And Eddie Brock. Oh, Eddie. If Peter failed anybody throughout this series, it'd be you. In this series, kind of like the Ultimate Comics, Peter Parker and Eddie Brock are meant to be longtime friends with shared childhood trauma.
Same old story. Two kids who grew up together. Our moms were best friends. Our dads were partners. They had a startup lab in Queens. And then the four of them went to a conference together. And there was this funny little plane crash.
But Peter and Eddie have recently been reunited and eventually become co-workers of sorts when they both start working for Curt Connors, which is exciting because recently there's a new alien life form that's been discovered and needs testing on. Yes, an alien, one more commonly known as a symbiote. You see where I'm going with this? During a break-in, Peter becomes attached to the symbiote, which not only gives him a kick-ass new suit, but also amplifies his powers. He's faster, stronger, and even fights smarter now. But all of this comes at a price. Not only does the suit amplify his powers, it also amplifies his negative emotion. The suit essentially makes you the person you try your best not to become. But don't get it twisted. Peter doesn't become straight up evil, it's the little things that build up over time. Lashing out at Flash, developing a short fuse and more angered attitude, and making less thought out decisions. Yeah, I mean, Peter used to be a jerk sometimes. He's human, but now he's a lot less self-aware. This eventually culminates in the symbiote convincing Peter he should start taking bribes to look the other way at certain crimes. Despite what happened the last time he looked the other way.
Not that guy! Stop him! He's got my money!
Thanks.
Stay back. Stay
That's my
back.
uncle. What happened?
Carjacker, he's been shot. Look, we just called the paramedics.
The last time Peter looked the other way during a crime he could have stopped, Uncle Ben got killed. And because of this lapse in judgment, Peter realizes that something is seriously wrong in his head, so he goes to take the damn suit off. The symbiote doesn't like this though. It doesn't want to be separated from Peter. He's a great energy source, so it retaliates, which leads to one of my favorite Spider-Man scenes of all time. It takes place completely inside Peter's head, and it's a moral debate between the symbiote and the memory of Uncle Ben, whether or not he needs the suit, and it's truly something special.
With great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Pretty words. But what good do they do? We still went to the venue. We still let the cat burglar go. He came down to take this car and took Ben away from us.
That's not the point, and I'll prove it.
This proves your point.
Wait. Watch him take his vengeance.
I should drop you. Take what you took from Ben Parker. But he wouldn't approve. With great power comes great responsibility. No one's denying the great work we've done, but how are we repaid? We have no money, no girl, no real friends. None, that is, save us.
I beg to differ.
Uncle Ben's right. I'm not alone in this, and I am not giving up who I am to become one with the ooze.
With the help of Uncle Ben's memory, Peter rips the symbiote from his skin and has plans to get rid of it for good, which brings me all the way back to Eddie Brock. Keep in mind, over the past couple weeks, Eddie has been having a not so great time. He's stressed out because of the disappearance of the symbiote, Peter's blowing him off almost every day, and he's honestly starting to resent his best friend. He is at his lowest point. So when Spider-Man, the hero of New York, comes to the lab with the symbiote, he's thankful, but Spidey's not returning it. He's freezing it to death, which makes Eddie explode as Spider-Man leaves. But Spidey made one little mistake. He didn't make it cold enough. The symbiote is well and alive. Keep in mind, from the suit's perspective, it's done nothing wrong. It's helped to make Peter stronger, fought his villains for him, protected him from distractions, and helped him earn money. Yet Peter rejected their bomb. So the symbiote makes an offer to someone nearby who shares his pain, Eddie Brock. Both wronged by Peter and Spider-Man, they come together, and the symbiote gives Eddie a gift, Peter's memories. Eddie finally understood. Whenever Peter blew off his friends, he was really running around in spandex playing hero and putting all of his loved ones in grave danger. That's just sickening to Eddie, so he decides to be sickening to Peter. From that moment forward, they're poison to both Parker and Spider-Man. They are Venom.
We will have vengeance on Spider-Man!
Venom represents all of Peter's mistakes, the things he gives up on when he decides to be Spider-Man, so when those mistakes come back for revenge, they aim for the heart. Spider-Man's greatest failures take physical form, and they don't just attack innocents, but the people closest to Peter. People like Gwen Stacy and Aunt May. People Eddie's known for years. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you write a compelling Venom. He's a combination between the most sympathetic Eddie Brock we've ever had, and a symbiote that, from its perspective, was just trying to help. And now we have one of the most dangerous Spider-Man villains of all time, because he knows who Peter really is, and it's all his fault. But all this focus on Venom somehow doesn't take away from the time spent developing the other villains. Shocker, Mysterio, Rhino, Electro, Sandman, the Vulture, Kraven, they all have solo episodes that help you familiarize yourself with their strengths, weaknesses, and what makes them tick. More often than not, no one is ever just evil to be evil. They've all been wronged, they've all had hopes and dreams taken away from them, and therefore they all have sympathetic qualities. Especially with the smaller, more intimate villains like Molten Man, who's really just a kid with a serious gambling addiction, and Jameson's son, who's a good, kind person twisted by an infectious disease. But none of these villains are more interesting than the Master Planner, aka the leader of the Sinister Six, aka the superior Dr. Otto Octavius, aka
Dr. Octopus. New villain in town. Doc Ock.
Dr. Otto Octavius is Peter Parker if he didn't get that one lucky bug bite, that one faithful field trip. Despite his intellectual prowess, he's a nobody at work and still gets pushed around by people like Norman Osborn. Now, you remember how Peter acted at the beginning of the series, right? Exaggerated swagger and too much confidence. That's exactly how Otto acts when he's introduced to a little addictive chemical called power. He manipulates everyone around him and uses people as stepping stones to reach his personal goals as Dr. Octopus. He is what Peter could have been without his friends and family to help him bring him back to Earth. Otto is all for great power, but lacks any form of responsibility, which is why he's one of the most compelling villains in this series and definitely one of my favorites. But hey, with me talking so much about villains, you'd think I have talked about the main antagonist of the show, right? Maybe it was Venom and Eddie, or maybe Doc Ock and his team of supervillains. You'd be wrong. Although people like Venom and Otto are the backbone of the show and their relationships or rivalries with Peter are what drive the emotion of the show, they're not the main villains. Don't get me wrong, they're huge players that take up several arcs, but they're not the villain. That role is left completely to the Green Goblin.
May I see your invitation, Spider-Man? Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave.
Leave now? When table 7 needs more hors d'oeuvres?
Introduced as just another random villain of the week, this Green Goblin instantly sets himself apart. For one, he makes more jokes than even the wall crawler himself, and two, we don't really know who he is. All the other villains in the show we've met before the tragic accidents that tore them from society, but not all gobby here. The most compelling part of this character isn't how he foils Spider-Man, but the mystery about who's behind the mask. And if you know anything about Spider-Man, or at least paid attention to the show so far, you'd see that there are two candidates, Norman Osborn and his son Harry. And focusing on Harry here, again, he is a very compelling part of the show. He doesn't take being second best lightly. He's outshined by Peter at every turn, and it seems like his own father is more proud of his best friend than he is of him. So he starts to look for an easy way out. He starts juicing. Yes, this Spider-Man cartoon that aired on WB Kids aimed to tackle Harry Osborn's drug problem, which just goes to show once again that the showrunners take this stuff seriously. It's not just a cheap animated cape show, it's got some serious and delicate care dedicated to it. But anyways, Harry's juicing up and he's feeling great. He's a little happier, he's a little smarter, and he even wins a spot on the football team. But he starts losing it, lashing out at his friends, gaps in his memory. He even goes missing for hours at a time, almost like Peter. And it's revealed in the Season 1 episode titled The Uncertainty Principle that Harry Osborn is the Green Goblin.
Now, as to why he attacked me,
Maybe I've got some anger issues.
I will not allow this.
So yeah, Harry's the Green Goblin. Right? It's not that simple. With Greg Weisman, it never is. He's always got an ace up his sleeve. He's always planning something, he's always scheming. And all of this, it's all just a green herring. Harry was never the Green Goblin, despite all the evidence pointing towards him. But they let you think he was. A lesser showrunner would have alluded that something was afoot in Season 1, but not Greg Weisman. He'd let you believe for an entire season and a half that Harry Osborn was the Green Goblin because it's what Peter Parker thought too. And this all culminates into the series finale where the truth is finally revealed to Peter during the biggest and most emotional battle of the show.
But last Halloween, you crashed. The Goblin crashed.
And you saw me limp away. Do you know how easy it is to fake a limp?
But Harry wasn't faking. When I found him that night, he was wearing Goblin's costume, and his leg was really hurt.
More serendipity. You had guessed my identity. I knew I had to redirect your suspicion, and when I returned home, I found Harry passed out from an overdose of green. It didn't take long to deduce the cause of Harry's sudden success at football and in school. It took only slightly longer to dress him as the Goblin. The limp completed the illusion.
You framed your own son?
I protected Harry. If I'd been sent to prison, who'd have made a man out of him?
That's a lot to go over. Compelling villains, real-world problems, a mystery that's executed better than anything I've seen since 2008, and it's all topped off with a nice slice of dramatic romance. The Peter, Gwen, Harry love triangle was always going to happen in a show like this. It's just easy drama, but then you add something new to the mix. That something new is the lovely Liz Allen. Liz Allen starts the show as a snooty cheerleader, a one-dimensional character who's with Flash Thompson. But as she's tutored by Peter, she realizes that she's never been treated right in the past, and eventually, Liz and Peter actually get together in a natural and straightforward way. And now, Peter Parker has to choose. Does he stay with Liz Allen, someone who's grown to adore him and makes him happy? Or does he go after Gwen Stacy, his best friend who's always been there for him, and the one he secretly always wanted to be with? That is what Spectacular Spider-Man is all about, choices and consequences. Gwen or Liz? Stay in and study, or go out swinging? Be there for your friends and family emotionally, or be their masked protector? These are all choices. Peter can never have both options, and no matter what he picks, people get hurt. He's Spider-Man, but where does the spider end and the man begin? And how would one person realistically balance their superhero secret identity and their real life? Spectacular is a complete masterpiece that has love for Spidey's whole history and writes characters better than they've ever been written before. I could go on for hours more, honestly I really could, but this video is already way longer than I'm used to, so I'll leave you both with my love for Spectacular and the scene that made me realize this is the best show I've ever seen.
I never asked to be Spider-Man. I never asked for these powers. I never knew it would mean a bashed up hand, a hard 9 p.m. curfew, no job, and friends who all think I'm scum. It was all just a twist of fate. Bad luck, a random bug bite. Easiest decision I ever made. Except I saved him. Spider-Man's no magic wand, but thanks to the webhead, Kurt's cured, and Billy gets his father back. So what if nobody threw a parade? Spidey stays because Spidey's needed. For now, anyway.
I love Spider-Man. He's on my watch, he's on my clothes, he's in the comics I read and the shows I watch and the posters on my wall. I eat, sleep, and breathe Spider-Man. Which is why this video was so difficult for me to make. I'm usually okay talking about the mediocre or even things I love because I think they're special, but how do I convey my feelings on my favorite show ever? Well, I try my best, and I hope despite my sloppy scripting and lack of real experience creating reviews, I was able to share my love for this show and spread it forward. And so, if you made it this far, thank you. You're the reason I spent countless hours and nearly sleepless nights to create this love letter to a long-cancelled cartoon. You're the reason I make these videos, and I appreciate all of you. So I'll leave you now, for real this time, with little more than my words about an animated, wall-crawling menace.